Israel the way Richard Pearl predicted it would. It's possible that we would be respected and admired across the Arab world for what we did, but none of these things have happened, just like God has not intervened in all the ways that George Bush and many of his religious supporters have. So, but my point here, my larger point, even larger than just Iraq, is that American liberals, who you have frequently held up to ridicule and used, again, entirely unfairly, people like Michael Moore and other people with whom he used to be associated with at The Nation magazine, like Noam Chomsky and Gore Vidal, who I always thought, had no business calling themselves liberals. That their views, the pragmatic, chastened liberalism, the kind of liberalism I describe in Why We're Liberals, has proven eminently sensible, and that's why Barack Obama is going to be president, with despite an enormous number of disadvantages, because the liberalism has just become common sense.
I hope he will become president. I've recommended that the people vote for him, but I don't think it can be put as glibly as you put it, because he's only able to do this because he has rather diluted his simplistic anti-war politics, especially, as I underlined and you didn't disagree, in the matter of a possible future confrontation with, or in fact almost inescapable future confrontation with Pakistan. Your self-congratulation, if I have to call it that, I'm sorry about the politics you hold, avoids one very small but I think suggestive thing. If it was up to you, Saddam Hussein and his sons would still have the whole of Iraq in their private ownership. If it was up to you, that would be the case. Iraq would be run by a psychopathic, terroristic, unstable crime family. Its society would be decaying. The divide and rule tactics that stir up Sunni against Shia and Sunni against Kurd and Arab against Kurd would still be state doctrine. And on the border of Iraq there would still be three other invaders, Turkey, Iran and Saudi Arabia, waiting for their chance to move in, partition and apportion the place. And there would have been a Rwanda or a Congo right on the Gulf, on a choke point of the world economy. That would have cost a lot more than $1 trillion, believe you me. Instead of which we have the makings of a federal system in Iraq, democratic elections, an open press, political parties, increased exploration, the discovery of oil where it hadn't been found before, including in Sunni areas, which means that we've abolished the petrochemical basis for fascism in the country, the disarmament and capitulation of Gaddafi's Libya, the withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon. In fact, the Syrians are now willing to say that they'll do something they never did before, which is recognize the existence of Lebanon as an independent state instead of claiming it's part of Syria. If you think that without a show of force and determination by the administration on these points, any of these things would have happened, I submit that you're mistaken.
Well, again, we're playing.
Well, not even mistaken, actually. I don't think these thoughts have crossed your mind.
I've been hearing about how Syria is going to free up Lebanon for a very long time. It hasn't happened. I heard.
Well, its army is out. Its army is out.
I heard right after the invasion we were about to experience a democratic revolution in Lebanon. That was shut down quite quickly. But I would submit that one could just as easily make a list of things.
Yeah, well, there are counter-revolutionary. Eric, there are counter-revolutionary forces as well. You accuse me of being a revolutionary. Not the worst insult I've ever had hurled at me. The fact that revolution inspires counter-revolution is well known to both of us. Yes, of course, there's a counterstroke in Lebanon, but from Syria and Iran through Hezbollah. But the fact is the Syrian army was withdrawn, and the fact is Syria is now willing to recognize Lebanon and open an embassy there, which it never did before. This is not nothing.
Again,
but yes,
we'll see.
Of course there are counterstrokes. Al-Qaeda in Mesopotamia tried to sabotage our federal democratic project in Iraq. You're quite right. They wouldn't have tried to do it if there was no such project. They would just have taken over the country without a fight.
Well, Christopher, your hypothetical is very well articulated, per usual, but I would submit that it's much easier to predict other things that would not have happened. Thousands of American soldiers would still be alive. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis would still be alive. Millions of Iraqis would still have their homes. There would be much more of a semblance of normality to life in Iraq. Iran would be much weaker inside Iraq. It's quite possible that bin Laden would be captured and that the Taliban would be much weakened. The United States would have roughly $1 trillion to take care of some of the problems.
That's not hypothetical.
All kinds of things.
That's just with the exception of what you say about the American soldiers.
And we wouldn't be torturing innocent Iraqis in Abu Ghraib and sullying the name of this country in a worse way than it's ever been sullied in its entire history,
with
including
the exception,
Vietnam.
that's not even a hypothetical, Eric, with respect. That's a wish list. of things that you...
No.
Yes,
Well,
that's things you hope...
Let's let the listener and the viewer decide that.
That's things
I think it's much clearer.
hope would have happened. And just on the point of Abu Ghraib, I've been to Abu Ghraib. I knew the name Abu Ghraib before it became famous, when it was a place where thousands of people were tortured to death every month. Prison conditions in Iraq certainly have very greatly improved since the coalition arrived, if you have to make a comparison like that. But with the exception of you're obviously right that if the United States hadn't used force in Iraq, it wouldn't have lost any soldiers. None of the other assumptions you make are safe at all. Certainly not about Iraqi lives, safety, security, or the fact that Iran now has to confront the fact, for all its saber-rattling, that there are American forces on two of its borders, which is something of a limit on the ability of the Revolutionary Guards to do whatever they like with their neighbors.
Well, I personally don't feel any safer, and as someone who's concerned very much about Israel, I personally don't feel safer on behalf of my friends in Israel or anyone else who's at the mercy of Iran, that country is any less dangerous than it was before we invaded Iraq. I also don't feel much better about those people who don't want to live under a theocratic dictatorship, that Iran is any weaker than it was with regard to Iraq. But Christopher, actually, to tell you the truth, I don't think we need to keep doing this. I think my point in this, in choosing this topic, was to illuminate the fact that, in my view, the work I've read of yours has parodied and to some degree slandered the view of American liberalism with regard to national security threats and other things. And I think that I've given you a chance to make the case that that's not the case, and I still believe it's the case, and I think we can let the people decide, as the saying goes.
I don't know, somebody cut off my free lifetime subscription to The Nation a while ago, so I don't get it anymore. But I know what I encounter when I go to speak in public from the left or from the anti-war forces. And it's a great deal more toxic and irrational than you're saying. I get people saying that the Bush administration, not the Israelis, blew up the World Trade Center, for example. I get people saying that the Jewish lobby forced Bush into Iraq, though, all the time. And you don't tell me you haven't been hearing this stuff, too. I hear a lot of incredibly, fantastically irresponsible garbage spouted from the anti-war factions, wherever I go.
I get it all the time, and in fact, you could hear it spouted from some of the anti-war demonstrations organized by whatever that group is called. But my whole point is that is unrepresentative of the broad swath of American liberals and of the Americans who oppose the war, and that's who I think ought to be running the country, and that's who I think will be running the country. So I don't have to apologize for those people. I shut them up as often as I can.
You simply mustn't. We're both obviously voting for the same candidate on this point.
Okay. All right, Christopher. Well, it was good to talk to you again, and thank you. I enjoyed it.
It's been real, Eric, as always.
Okay. Bye-bye.